From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In the NOCO, your daily slice of Northern Colorado news and happenings. I'm Erin O'Toole.
Now, something that I would love to do one day is I would like to make a bee suit without Velcro for black people, because if you get Velcro in our hair, it's the end of your day.
That's Dr. Samuel Ramsey, otherwise known as Dr. Sammy, on the Hulu show Your Attention Please. Dr. Sammy is a bit of a celebrity scientist in the world of entomology, that's the study of insects. He's an assistant professor and endowed chair in CU Boulder's Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology. He talks about science on his YouTube channel, and he attributes his creativity to his identity as a gay Christian black scientist who was terrified of bugs as a kid.
People fear what they don't understand. I live at the intersection of multiple identities.
But lately, Dr. Sammy is getting attention for something very serious. He believes a crisis is on the horizon for America's honeybees. A tiny parasite he is researching has devastated bees in Asia and is spreading to Europe. Dr. Sammy is studying how we might prevent this from spreading to North America and becoming a honeybee pandemic. And he joins us now. Dr. Sammy, I'm so excited to talk with you today.
I am so excited to get to have this conversation with you.
We love bees, and your research focuses on honeybees and their decline around the globe. Lately, you've been focused on a tiny mite that is especially scary called tropilaelops. Easy for me to say. I don't know.
Great job. Did you practice before this?
Maybe a little bit. Maybe like 20 times. So what are these mites?
These tiny little mites, these tropilaelops mites, or tropy mites, because they really need a good common name at this point. These mites are a part of a group of parasitic arachnids that attach themselves to other organisms and cause all kinds of havoc as they're feeding on them. And we're pretty concerned about these specifically because they recently made a host shift to the European honeybees. Before this, they were feeding on a group of bees, the giant honeybees, that had a way of controlling them. They have their own systems of resistance that are genetically embedded in their populations. But our honeybees are naive to them. And so they don't have the capacity to control them. And that means that this parasite can just run wild.
I know that this is not the only mite that threatens honeybees. In fact, you've been raising the alarm and making videos about varroa mites for at least 7 years. It sounds like the tropy mite is so much worse than that.
That's what the scary part is, because the varroa mite that you mentioned, its full scientific name is Varroa destructor.
Whoa.
So that should signal to you this creature is pretty problematic. They are doing the most. And then you find out that there is a creature that can do more than the most. You don't want that. Varroa is already driving this trend of honeybee health decline that we have seen for a good while now, as they have distributed themselves in the broad population of honeybees. So finding out that that parasite was able to gain supremacy over the honeybee population, and that there is one that is even better at doing so, really has to make us think about how we manage these sorts of issues.
Is there not general awareness about this?
Here's the thing. The honeybee population on this planet is centered in one area of the world, and that's Southeast Asia. You can find every single species of honeybee that exists in that little corner of the world, and where they evolved and diversified into all the species that exist. And so if you really want to understand the new parasites and diseases and issues with honeybee health, that's the area of the world where you really have to be conducting study. But unfortunately, that's not where the vast majority of study is conducted. As a result of some of the vestiges of colonialism and other issues, the vast majority of it comes from the Western world, where we have one honeybee species, and that creates this imbalance where every time a new disease or parasite arises in that area of the world, we're all very surprised by it. We run around kind of flailing to figure out, like, oh no, what do we do about it? So I'm trying to get on the other end of this. I'm trying to make sure that before this becomes an emergency, we already have a plan in place. When I first went to Thailand to study honeybee health, I saw this parasite for the very first time, and really getting to see what it did to the bees, getting to see the impact on the colonies and just how quickly a population of these parasites could take the colony down. That's immediately when I decided to sound the alarm. So I came back to the United States, started giving presentations about these creatures, and beekeepers started raising money like I was running for president. They raised more than $96,000 to send me back to Thailand to conduct the research projects that I've conducted so far that have yielded our first understanding of which pesticides can actually be effective at controlling these organisms. Now, honeybees are an introduced species in the US, and there is a bit of this xenophobic way of thinking about organisms where anything that's not from here has to be bad and anything that is native has to be good. Yeah. And it's not the case that introduced means invasive. The same way that we have brought in livestock into the US and we've managed that livestock, the honeybees are a type of livestock that we manage and that have become integral to us maintaining the system of food production that allows us to feed a populace that is much larger than what this amount of land could likely support otherwise.
With all of that in mind, how can we get ahead of this? I mean, it sounds like it would be very bad for the tropy mite to get here to North America, to the US. Is there anything we can do to stop it coming?
That is one of the hardest questions to answer because as we understand the population of these parasites, we also have to take a moment and recognize we are no longer in a world where there are discrete ecosystems. We are in a global ecosystem. So one thing that happens in one part of the world can very quickly and very easily become a problem in another part of the world. There was a time where there was this disease spreading around the world, and we weren't sure what to do about it. And we thought, oh, well, it's over there in China, and it'll probably just stay over there in China, right? And then immediately it moved everywhere, and we had the COVID-19 pandemic, and it changed our world. But what we should have done when it first cropped up in early 2019 is start studying immediately, working on sequencing the genome and understanding all these different parts of it and figuring out vaccines for it. And if we had started at that time with the same timeline that we've had for the vaccines, we could have had those vaccines available in fairly early 2020 or at least by the summer. And so that's the kind of thing I'm hoping that we'll do with the tropy mites, recognize that they are able to spread very rapidly. There's only so much that we can do to close all the potential avenues where they could arrive because they could show up through another country.
I think it's so interesting, too, that, you kind of mentioned a lack of diversity in the American honeybee population, and it almost sounds like it reflects on diversity in the field of science and how important that is as well.
It certainly does. When that parasite that I was talking about, the tropy mite, when it arrived in Pakistan, within less than a decade of its arrival, it had extirpated all of their European honeybees. They had just were destroyed. Without that diversity present, there was a significantly diminished tool set that they could use to manage that matter and solve those problems. When we have a smaller tool set in science, when we have fewer people who are thinking about things in a different way than normal, we have a diminished capacity to solve problems and reach different solutions. Diversity is going to be what allows us to tackle huge problems like climate change and huge problems like feeding a growing populace. We need to have different ways of thinking about it because the same way isn't going to get us there.
It's a powerful message. Thank you so much for everything you're doing to get that out there. Dr. Sammy, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
So glad that you've given me this opportunity to talk about the thing that I'm the most excited about.
And that's it for us today on In the NOCO. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thanks so much for listening.